owners really, and how they can, you can encourage conversations about how they can use their business to meet their goals. So what I've done is I've created a case. Let's see if I can put it on my screen. There we go. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Right, so I've got just created an example here. It's a bastardized version of a client record, but I've played around with some of the numbers to make sure everything works nice and easily. This particular client, if I give you a bit of background, he's married, he runs his own business. It's a service type company. He's got 3 kids. One's at private school. He's got another 2 that he wants to send to private school to make sure they're all treated equally. And we've had discussions about, retirement and planning in recent years. What he has is he's got his own business, and on the left-hand side here, you can see there's a business interest aspect. Okay, so it's all set up under a limited company. You can add your limited company, and the key to this, if you're going to use this function, is to put some detail into this business. Okay, so we've got details of the shareholders, we've got details of the accounts, and then this analysis tab here is the one that you want to make sure is completed. So what this effectively tells us is what's the turnover, what's the cost, what's the gross profit. We've got the current ratio and asset test ratio. That's really just about the liquidity of the company. Has it got enough money to service its debts? Anything over 1 is pretty good, and they're probably going to have a bit more liquidity. But you don't really need to know much about these numbers. It's just making sure this information is up to date and you've got a trend to see how consistent things are. And you'll see how this will apply as we go through the process.
Matt?
Yes.
I presume this is an item in the client as opposed to a separate entity?
Yeah, it's in the client. So if you just go, as I showed down here, put the client details in, you can just add it here. So business interests, I can go in here. I can add a new business, a new company if I wanted to. There's a limited company, and you put in all the details about that company on this front page.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah.
On this, when you go into the one thing that we found using this is when you open the business.
Yeah.
Is that the value you have on the front screen? I think I've got this right. The value you have on the front screen is not the value that goes into the plan. It's the value that you have on the shares. So if you
That's right.
There's no shareholders here.
No, it's not, this is a new one. Hang on, let's go into this one here. Look.
Yes, so that value of 236 is not the value that goes into the plan. It's the one that comes up from shares.
That's right.
From the shareholders.
In this particular set of circumstances, because it's a service company and he's not going to be able to sell the business, it's less of an issue in using the software on this. Okay. Yeah. And ultimately, the business is only worth what somebody's willing to buy it for. I think we try to treat a business like an inheritance. It's an added bonus. We want to try and do our planning without that capital input, because you don't know whether you could actually sell the business at the time. If you were trying to sell your business today, for example, well, good luck. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to, very few people are going to buy a business at the moment. That is the value that comes through.
Yeah, what we tend to put in is the value of, if we've, for example, just talking to a client this morning where we've set up investments for his company for surplus cash.
Yep.
And where he keeps a decent cash reserve. So we've got a value there about 600,000, with investments in cash that's a fairly static value. And
that's effectively the value of the company if it was wound up today and you could take the money out.
Yeah, so no allowance for goodwill.
Yeah, and I would go with that. I've kept that complication out of this scenario.
Okay.
For a particular exercise.
Yep.
Now, from the point of view of net worth, they've sort of played around with pensions. Not really got a massive amount, but they've got money in the bank to pay for the school fees for the next 3 or 4 years. They've got some other investments that are building up to pay for school fees from 5 years onwards. A couple of pensions. They do a low salary, high dividend approach. So his wife is also a shareholder. She's got a part-time job as well. There's a salary, there's the dividends. We're trying to keep them, their accountant is trying to keep them below higher rate tax as far as possible. These withdrawals here.
Public school, crikey.
Yeah, well, there's 3 of them. So
Yeah,
these withdrawals here are really to have, to reflect the fact that the school fees are being paid from the bank accounts first rather than from investments. If you didn't have that, then the bank account will be left behind, and it doesn't really reflect the situation. Obviously, they've also had the opportunity to take out certain expenses from the business, such as mileage and the like, and those are reflected as an average every year. So that's the sort of background for the position. The original discussion is around retiring at 65. So we look at the cash flow. At 65, smashing. Everything's on track. There's no problem with that. But the client's been having a think. He doesn't want to work till he's 65. He wants to work till he's 58. And just give up this nice age. The kids should be off their hands and they can go out and do the things that they want to do. So for the benefit of this presentation, I've created another scenario here where we look at him retiring at 58. Okay, so the situation has changed because he's got 7 years less working. He's got 7 years less worth of investment returns on his surplus cash. Now, we have assumed that any surplus cash is invested in line with his attitude to risk. And he's in retirement for longer. So clearly that's going to have some implications. So what we do is we use this income tab here. Everybody's used it. You would always like to keep a buffer around £50,000 in the bucket, or whatever you like to call it. If he's going to need to take more money out of the business, he'll take it as a dividend because he feels that's more tax efficient. So how much would he need to take every year in order for that to turn blue? Sorry, it's a bit slow. Software's naff.
You're doing the support today, Matt. I'm just sitting.
Okay, so what he's saying is he requires a dividend of £10,523 a year in order to take that into the blue. But because he's got a business interest, it's got this little red tab here. If you click onto that, you can copy that amount to the business. And that will pull up that analysis aspect. Now, what I've highlighted with Raj, and he's going to look on to amending this, is obviously we all know that you can only pay a dividend from net profit. This will simply pull the dividend figure into the gross profit margins. So you're going to need to gross that up. It's around £2,500 a year. Okay. So this then opens up a discussion with the client to say, look, if you want to retire at 58, you've got to have to do something with the business. Is increasing your gross margin by 12% a year achievable?
Can you just go back and explain how you got that, how you got to 12.5%, please, Matt?
Yeah, well, if you're going to pay a dividend of 10,500, you're paying that after corporation tax.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So all you're really then doing is facilitating the client and coaching the client to work out how he's going to do his 12.43%. So he said, well, yeah, I can do that. That's how are you going to go about it? What options do you have? Well, I could reduce costs. I could increase fees, a combination of the two. I can work longer hours, but I don't want to do that. But you're allowing the client then to develop their own strategy, because there's no point me telling the client how to run his business and how to improve things, because I don't know it. He knows it inside out, but he then has a way of knowing what he needs to achieve in order to get to that magic number at age 58. Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Has anyone else actually used this, or just Matt?
Just Matt. I didn't know that button was there.
Yeah.
I mean, the other way you can look at it is to say, well, look, let's keep that in for the time being. So I'm going to show that impact of the regular dividend income. Okay, so we're going to keep it. And there, that's him if he takes the dividend. If he manages to do that within his company, he takes the dividend. But then you can have a wider conversation and say, well, do you need the extra cash? Because you're going to pay corporation tax on it, you're going to pay income tax on it at a higher rate, higher dividend tax rate. Do you need it? Well, not really. Well, have you actually thought about putting in a pension contribution? Now, the pension contribution is actually only £10,000 that you need to put in, because it's an allowable for corporation tax. You really only need to increase your profits by 10%. Okay, well, that sounds like a good idea. Well, what does that look like? You can then, I have looked at this, compare the difference between him taking the dividend out and investing it and taking a pension. Oh, I say that, it should be different. Hang on.
It's in the wrong one, Matt. That's it. So Matt's actually created the scenario.
So I created a scenario with the pension. You can see, if you include the employer pension contribution, he's actually better off at the end terms. I've left the value of the pension pot out of this scenario. I'm looking at sustainable income over the longer term. If I overlaid the pension funds, you would see an even more significant difference between the two.
So essentially less liquid capital, but in the long term, more income is what the chart is showing.
Was there any pension left for inheritance tax value purposes?
I'm sure there is. I haven't looked at that, so we'll soon find out. Hang on. Let's go into this scenario here. Oh. And overlay the pension. Hang on. So no, because I've done it as a sustainable pension income, it's running out 100. You know, in actual fact, would you do that? Well, I don't know what the legislation is going to be in 10 to 15 years' time, so I've no idea, number one. But if we got to that stage, we would probably say, well, you might want to take more income in the early years, but take it from your capital rather than your pension.
Yeah. If he did die prematurely, his wife's in a better position. Certainly,
yes.
Or 75.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, it's not perfect by any means, but it allows you to have that conversation with the client and the sort of coaching scenarios to get them to think about their business and make some changes. It's something they're in control with. So we can't control everything, but if we can facilitate some changes that they can make in their business to allow them to retire earlier, bonus.
Yeah,
I think there's a great deal of value in that.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, in that scenario there, you could say to the client, look, you perhaps can't afford to increase your gross margin by 10, 12% in one go, but that could be an ambition over the next 2 years to achieve 15% to make up for the first 2 years, you know. But as you say, it's just a great way of showing the benefits of taking some course of action.
Yeah. I think the client at the end of the day knows whether they can do that. They don't know. They say, well, no, I can't. I can only increase it by 5% a year. Right. Okay. Well, if you want to retire at 58, there are some other options. You know, you can spend less now. Oh, I've got someone wanting in the waiting room, Raj.
Oops. Can you see that?
I've just admitted them. Yeah, so if you want to retire at 58, you can spend less now. You can actually send just one of the kids to private school and save yourself some money. Well, I'm not going to do that. Well, okay, well, the alternative is take a bit more risk. Well, that's a different conversation. Or you might have to work a couple of years longer. Oh, well, as long as it's before 65, I'm quite happy with that. If I go to 60, brilliant. 58 is ideal.
And things might change between now and 58 anyway, which enables him to still go at 58. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How did you find the information out about gross margins and stuff to populate that field?
Well, if you're working with business owners, you have to get previous accounts anyway. And you just input the data into the previous accounts. So smaller companies, a very straightforward set of accounts. And it's quite simple to highlight what you need to put in.
That was brilliant. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Helpful.
Very much so.